Okay, so in this video we're going to do another example, and this is going to be finding the inverse, the equation of the inverse function for a rational function, okay? But the steps are going to apply. You just have to be careful about a couple of things that I'll touch as I walk through this problem, okay? So, if we're given this example, we're given this function f of x, so it's a rational expression. Notice that x cannot equal 4 for obvious reasons, because we can't have 0 in the denominator. Now, a couple of things that I'm going to tell you is don't forget what we've learned in previous videos or what we've learned in previous sections in college algebra, okay? Because this is going to be helpful for you to be able to use, okay? So these are things as we're building our repertoire of tools, if you will. Okay, so one thing is we know we're going to have a vertical asymptote at x equals 4, right? That's why x can't equal 4. There's a vertical asymptote there. But also realize that there's a horizontal asymptote at y equals 2. So guess what? Right away I know that 2 cannot be in the range, or excuse me, 2 is not in the range of this function. That's going to be important later, okay? So let's, again, so keeping this in mind, let's start. Okay, so step 1, we're going to replace f of x with y. So we're going to write this as 2x plus 3 over x minus 4. And then we're going to exchange, or interchange, or exchange the x's and the y's. So now I'm going to write this as x equals 2y plus 3 over y minus 4. And now I'm going to solve for y. So how do we normally solve rational expressions? Well, we're going to multiply both sides and get rid of the fraction, right? So we're going to multiply both sides by y minus 4. So what do we get? We're going to get x times y minus 4 equals 2y plus 3. Okay? And now, here's where you be careful. Well, not be careful, but pay attention. Okay? So now I'm going to distribute, because we got to get the y. We got to solve this for y. So the only way to solve for the y is I'm going to have to distribute the x somehow and break this up. And the only way to break this up is to distribute the x. So I'm going to distribute the x, and so I'm going to write this as xy minus 4y, or excuse me, xy minus 4x, okay, equals 2y plus 3. So now what I'm going to do is, okay, now I've got to get all the y's on one side and everything else on the other side. So why don't I just do this? I'm just going to add 4x to move the 4x over here. Right, so that's going to go away. And so let's rewrite this. So that's going to be xy equals 2y plus 4x plus 3. And again, I'm doing this in probably more steps than necessary, but again, I want to make sure you guys see exactly how I'm doing this. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to now subtract 2y from both sides. And so now what I'm going to get, if I subtract 2y from both sides, I get xy minus 2y, and then 2y minus 2y over here goes away, and I'm just left with 4x plus 3. Okay? And now, guess what? Now I can factor out the y. So now I can write this as y times the quantity x minus 2 equals 4x plus 3. And then finally I get to divide both sides by x minus 2. And I get y equals 4x plus 3 divided by x minus 2. And notice that now, what is the restricted value here? The restricted value is x cannot equal 2. And that should make perfect sense since 2 is not in the range of this function. It makes sense that 2 would not be in the domain of the inverse function. And so, f inverse of x equals 4x plus 3 over x minus 2, where x cannot equal 2. And we're done. Now, one thing that I may not have mentioned, and I want to mention it now, so pay attention. One of the things about the inverse function and the original function and the inverse function is this. The domain and range of the inverse function is the opposite of the original function. So the domain of f of x is the range of f inverse of x. The range of f of x becomes the domain of f inverse of x. Okay, so it makes sense that here 2 is not in the range where 2 is not in the domain. Just like 4 is not in the domain here, but if you notice, 4 is not in the range of this function because there's a horizontal asymptote at y equals 4 here. Okay? So keep that in mind. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but keep in mind that that's one of the things about inverse functions is that the domain and the range switch. Okay? And again, if you think about it, just to go back, it goes back to the fact that f goes from here, this is the domain, and this is the range, where f inverse goes this way. So this is the domain, and this is the range. Okay? And that's it. So again, make sure you know how to do these. Make sure you pay attention because again, rational functions bring a little bit of nuance, a little bit of extra stuff you have to be careful of or pay attention to. But other than that, that's just using the 4 steps. And we're done. Have a great day.